Hello and welcome to Still Uncaptured. My name is Khomotso Matsunyane.
And mine is Ndumiso Ham Fringobo.
Yebo, yes.
Ikadi lasehammersdale.
Ikadi lasehammersdale.
Nakwamnamatha emaqadini.
Nakwabani?
Kwamnamatha.
Kwamnamatha.
Yes.
Ngubani umnamatha?
Very long story. You don't really want to know. That's my way of
but
saying
it just sounds nice. Oh, you have no idea?
I have no idea.
Namata. But you think it was somebody's name?
Probably.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the massive. This is actually embarrassing that I actually do not know this. Because
I don't know about embarrassing. It's just unusual.
Yeah.
Because you're usually a fountain of useless information. As am I. It takes one to know one.
Yeah.
So we're just going to have a general conversation between us today. We don't have a guest. And I wanted to talk about just things that enter the mind as happens between you and I, where, you know, like at 2 a.m, I might send you a voice note. She's saying, Ganram, I think we should talk about this or we should talk about that. So in the past few weeks, we would have seen the story of Mam Nandi Nyembe, who's a celebrated actor in South Africa. And as per usual, stories of distress, not being able to buy food, the Prince of Zoro, Barekemang, Gaten McKenzie.
Yes.
He loves coming to the rescue. Dun, 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 it's Gaten starring. Dun, 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 dun. Here's money. You get money. Everybody gets money. So anyway, I was such a populist. And his desire to be liked, it's a little too much. But in any case, so Gaten donated to Mam Nandi. I know Masingita Masunga also did a drive for Mam Nandi. But in all these pictures that I'm seeing about Mam Nandi, and I'm grateful that something is happening, although, you know, the thing is these donations and all not are a short-term solution to something that needs significantly more. We're talking about an industry that has been decimated, and we're talking about a lack of security for actors and people who make television and film, which just does not exist.
Basically, you're talking about freelancers. You're talking about you and I, right?
There we go.
Yeah.
Talking about people like us.
Yeah.
But wherever Mam Nandi went in all her pictures, she's got this white little bragignana, this cute little dog that I'm just thinking to myself, you know, don't tell me black people don't like dogs, because it is not true. Certainly in your household, that's not the reality. Certainly in my household, it's not my reality. I love my dog, and it's not the first dog that I've had. This one is a Pomeranian, so it's a bit of a braggy, and it can fit on my lap. I had 2 Rottweilers.
I remember your Rottweiler face.
Scaramouche.
Yeah.
Scaramouche and Alexandra.
Yes.
Scar and Alex.
By the way, Scaramouche, okay, there was a justice in the United States called Justice Scaramouche, right?
Was there?
Yeah. Oh,
I don't know.
But he's more recent. I think he was during Trump's time.
Right.
But Scaramouche was it from the song?
No. From the Three Musketeers.
Of course.
I think it's about around that time, you know, essentially. Scaramouche and Alexandra.
Scaramouche.
Will you do the fandango?
Galileo!
Thunderbolt and lightning. Very, very frightening me.
So you had Scar and your Rottweilers.
We get distracted so easily.
I know.
I had Scaramouche and Alexandra.
Yeah.
And they lived to about 9 years.
Yeah.
Alex and Scar. And they started then getting a cancer on their spine, which meant that
both of them,
like within a year of each other, they would just all of a sudden the back would flop.
Yes.
And it's like, my dog can't walk. So you do what any normal person would do, any compassionate person would do.
Yeah.
No, you don't hit it with a hammer in the back. You take it to the vet or to the nearest SPCA, and both dogs had to be put down basically within 6 weeks of each other.
Yes.
So there's 2 things that come to mind when I talk about this. One, can we disassociate ourselves with the belief that black people don't like dogs? And it's not just about dogs, because when people say black people don't like dogs, they're really talking about all animals in general, which is the biggest load of nonsense, because we as a continent have been able to maintain our natural habitats.
Yeah.
Significantly better than the Europeans have.
Yeah.
Right? People come to this continent to go on what we call it?
Safari.
A safari.
African
for
safari.
a reason. However, when you read popular literature, you would think that Africans are just out there killing every elephant they can find for their tasks.
It's also
and not respectful of nature in general.
But it's also perpetuated by very senior people that you believe are elders. I mean, I remember former President Jacob Zuma getting to, well, he didn't really get into hot water because I think he was preaching to the choir where he said, we are black people, we dogs, do you remember that?
No, I don't.
Yeah, he did. He said something about, that's like white people problems, worrying about
And it had
dogs.
to do with the dog?
It had to do with the dog, right? And the fact that, there's this whole thing about white people, even comedians go there. I mean,
Right.
What's his name? Nene, Sfiso Nene.
Right.
He's got this joke about dogs deciding, do they want to go live with black people or Indians and whatever, and then they just decide they're going to stay with white people and so on. But what's interesting about that is it goes back to the conversation you and I love having, which is about alienation from nature and the land.
That's right.
So this whole thing really comes with urban black people. It's almost like the whole thing about black people don't swim. Of course, black people swim. You go to anyone who grew up in a village can swim.
Where there's a river.
Where there's a river.
And
so
where there's
on.
an ocean close by.
And so the reason that black people don't swim is nothing to do with culturally we don't swim.
Right.
It's just alienation from the land and the space because there's no rivers in most townships, right? And so dog ownership, if you actually go, for instance, in the villages, people love their dogs. People love their pets because the history of the domestication of animals actually coincided with the advent of, for instance, of agriculture.
Right.
Where people realized, oh, flip, I've got goats that I'm keeping, but there are wolves. So what do I need? I need another wolf to go after those other wolves. So how would you
do
treat...
we have wolves or jackals in this country?
Wait, whatever.
Whatever.
I know. I could have said tiger, and we don't have tiger.
I'm just like, wolfie? Okay, I don't know.
maybe not wolf, jackals.
Okay.
Jagalas.
Jagalas.
But no, the thing about it is pet ownership has just always been fundamentally a part of us. And the reason that originally we domesticated cats was also for the same reason, is that you wanted something to go after the rodents.
Right.
And so you had to treat this cat really well.
Right.
Whatever you did its job.
And cats are also good with snakes, right?
Awesome.
Right.
No. Cats will kill a snake.
I've been thinking lately maybe we should get a cat because of all these rains, the grass is growing bigger everywhere where we are. So there's been snakes at our crescent, Lapa Esprit View, about 3 in the past 2 weeks that have been found. So I panic because I have a very incredibly successfully domesticated dog.
Bajon.
Successfully integrated into the family. Baton does not know what it lives like to live outside. Baton Kimoto. You understand? He has to be inside in case lightning starts because he hates that. Then he can go under my mom's barraking kist and sleep there because he can't bear lightning. And he hates running water.
Yes.
Essentially. Even like giving him a bath is always like a bit of a problem. But Ubaton, Kinja Yakamuntlung, he is a house dog. He likes to behave as if he's a township special. And he likes to argue with some of our neighbor dogs. And our dog's neighbor on the left-hand side is a pit bull.
Yeah.
And I look at Baton and I'm like, really?
This pit bull can just swallow you. You wouldn't have to chew.
Mbama. This pit bull could give Baton a hot slap and Baton would die. Essentially. He's not in a position to be fighting township dogs.
You know how my brain works, right?
How does your brain work?
Because I'm sitting there, I'm just thinking, Baton is a very urban dog. What is Sababi and so on. And do they speak the same languages? They do. Does Baton speak spread view? Like, do this?
Baton speaks English?
Because...
And can I say it with a private school accent?
No, but, okay, sorry.
It's okay. No, but it's true. too. If my dog could speak.
Yeah.
He's speaking English, which I don't know how it happened. But all of a sudden, maybe it's because of the videos I was watching when I was raising him, but Baton knows come, Baton knows go, Baton knows no. Do you understand?
Yes.
Like, some of those and whatnot, sometimes we speak to him in that, but his first language is English.
Because I tend to speak, I don't know why, okay? We've got two, right?
Is Benjita and?
Benjita and Buster.
Buster.
Yeah. And Benjita is basically, there's this English word that I cannot, what is it, toponymia? What is it? Okay, I'm not quite sure what it is, but...
What does it mean?
It's just two words that have just been conjoined.
Okay.
You just put two words together. So Vumezita at the time was going through a phase where even his bedspread, his duvet cover was like Ben 10, and Sayo, it was Go Gita. So the one's like, no, the dog's got to be Ben 10. The other one's like, Go Gita. And you were like, it's very easy. Ben Gita. That's how we got Ben Gita.
Is that how Ben Gita got named?
Yes. But then Basta was just Basta. Like, he was just one of several puppies in the litter. And he was just huge and big. And so I looked at him and she's like, that's Basta. So that's
then you got his name.
Yeah, he got Basta. But the conversation you're having is exactly the issue around the fact that we do humanize our pets, don't we?
We do.
Like I recently in my Sunday Times column actually wrote about Benjita because Benjita is now 13 and Benjita is on her last legs.
Right.
Yeah, it's about time. And it's about the conversation we're about to have.
The end is nigh.
The end is very nigh. The only reason we haven't really made a decision of when we're taking her in to be put down is because we owe her a debt. We have to take her to the beach. This dog has just always been an Israeli dog, has only ever known Afrikaners and Gert and Kuwasis. So we want to put her in a car, drive her to the ocean, and just have a frolic on the beach before we take care of it. But the conversations that I've had with that dog, like I'll come back. I mean, I used to do graveyard at Power FM, like midnight until 3. And the only soul that would be alive when I came back
is Benjita.
And I'd sit on the stoop and be like, Benjita, yes, Benjita. And Benjita understood me. Because that's what we do with our dogs. It's companionship.
Yeah.
So the history might have been about protection when we first started domesticating dogs as a species.
Right.
But it now really is about companionship. You're talking about Umam Tandi Nyembe. And I imagine that dog is really, that's why.
So I get it that in the US, for example, you can get a license, excuse me, for your dog to frame them as an emotional support dog. Okay. So that you're allowed to go into places that wouldn't typically allow for dogs to be there. Like, I'll check to see if I'm going to a restaurant and meeting with friends to see if dog friendly. Yeah. If because there's times when I want to take my dog with. For many reasons, either for companionship or because I know I'm going to come late and that's later than his meal time, or I know that he's going to be alone for too long, so to speak, well, according to me, for too long, because I have considerations that my dog must be taken care of.
I am married to a woman, and I'm outing you, Tebo Khongobo, who doesn't particularly like pets.
Okay.
She really doesn't like pets.
Okay.
And I've been married to this woman now 21 years. In July, it'll be 21 years. And we've still have yet to have our first cat. Because I'm more of a cat person than I am a dog person. And I'm being reminded by the whole thing about Baton and you worrying about the distress that Baton might be experiencing because you are away.
Because he's alone.
Do you know what the beautiful thing about cats is?
You don't have to worry about that.
They don't give a fuck.
Right.
Cats, if you feed them,
right.
If you have a scratching post for them, if you have a litter box for them to cack in,
right,
and there's water, cats don't care. And the last cat we had at home, oh my God, Garfield, he was a ginger. His proper name was Garfield. But then, he ended up with a nickname. What
was his nickname?
Usbu. Oh, yeah, look, my brother, youngest brother, would say, Garfield, Sbu. because the cat looked so much like one of my friends.
Right.
And she's like, so when I look at this cat, I just think of Smoo.
Ufana
Just
noSmoo.
Ufana noSmoo, yeah.
So Garfield Spusiso Ngobo.
Smoo.
It's true. My dog also has 3 names, like Baton, Batong, Matsunyane.
Matsunyane.
Yes, basically. Like, if
Properly.
really, what my brother and I had an agreement when we were growing up, as teenagers, actually, so weird, that his first daughter and my first son were going to be named after each other. Well, I wanted to call the dog their
that might not have gone down.
Just thought, no, don't do it. No, don't do it. But and it's not also a new thing. So obviously you've had pets before. When you're growing up, you're talking about Smoo.
Yeah, Smoo. And
the cat.
Yeah, Smoo. I mean, Smoo loved ice cream. Did not like blueberry much.
But Smoo did not die nicely.
No, man. So unfortunately, and this is the thing, right? So in townships, and this is the whole point, is that the dogs there were domesticated and they were used to cats. And Smoo would just walk around the neighborhood, go into other people's yards.
And everybody knew.
And everybody knew that there is Smoo.
Yes, Smoo.
And he'll just go into whatever house he goes into and comes. So then the family, December 1996 rather, moves from, this is why I'm from Hammersdale, so we moved from Hammersdale to Kwamnamat. Hey, the dogs there, Kwamnamat, were not
used to cats.
So shame, Smoo. I mean, he died a really horrible death.
Oh.
He was
mauled.
He was mauled, and they just... Do
you know what we called it?
What is that called?
Murder.
It's murder, man.
Smoo was murdered. Which is not...
Do you have any idea? I mean, by that time, this is 1997, so I was 25 already. I wasn't living at home.
Sure.
I was living in a flat in Pinetown or whatever. And no one told me that Smoo had died. So I come home, I'm like, where's Smoo? And no one wants to look at me.
Oh.
Then finally someone's like, why is it? Oh. So the dog just came and just... Because Smoo thought it was back in Hammersdale.
So I'd be curious from our listeners as to what relationship do you have with your dog? Particularly one that disproves the theory, because it's a rubbish theory and it's completely not true. Certainly, it's a changing culture that we have from, say, the 70s, when sort of like dogs used to be fed like that. When you throw pap at them or whatever it is that you're feeding them, to now having dog food, to now going to the vet. Because before I fly with my dog, I have to make sure that he's got certain jabs.
Yes.
Otherwise, he can't fly. For example, before he stays at a boarding house, they want to know that he's got
all the jabs.
So I'm curious as to our listeners as to, like, do you have a pet? What is its name? And what's your relationship with it? When we come back, we'll talk about this next. Welcome back to the show. As you know, one of the things that we like is disproving myths. Either disproving them or proving that they're true. By talking about things that are a bit left field or having our own irreverent take on them. Like, we were talking about dogs just now and pets and what kind of pets you have. And you guys are going to write to us and tell us about them. But what I wanted to finish that segment with is that when the timing was right for my 2 dogs, I did the honorable thing, I believe.
The humane thing.
The humane thing. That's the word I was looking for. Thank you. I did the humane thing and took the dogs to the vet, and they were put down.
Because why should the dogs suffer?
They were suffering physically.
In 2012, I wrote a column for my Sunday Times column. I remember it ended up in my collection of columns, Eat, Drink and Blame the Ancestors. So Long Spider-Man, the previous dog, Benjita's precursor, passed away. And I wrote what I thought was a beautiful...
It was a beautiful ode.
It was a beautiful ode to Spider-Man. Because also Spider-Man, we had to just put him down because he was poisoned. Someone wanted to come into the yard and they fed him something.
That happens a lot.
And he just was basically degenerating. His insides were rotting, while he was alive. So and you had to put him down because it was the right thing to do.
Let me ask you this. Why is it that should anything happen to me, God forbid, that I should get a major dread illness?
Yes.
And it is quite obvious that I've got a limited amount of time to die. Why in South Africa am I not allowed legally to choose how I'm going to die? Euthanasia is fine for animals, but it's not okay for us. I completely am in disagreement with that. I think If I want to go out, give me the option to do so humanely.
You know what it is? Ultimately, it's the whole thing around why it is the madam. I remember I had a tour with Helen Zille a couple of years ago, and it lasted like, I think, almost 2 days, because she was talking about banning the sale of alcohol on Sundays in the Western Cape. I'm like, why Sunday? Why not Tuesday? Why not? It's this whole notion. It's how it is that we are apparently, our constitution says that we are a secular nation. But are we?
Oh, no, we're not. We're very Christian.
We are very Christian. And unfortunately, that's the whole issue. And because I don't think it's not so much about, what is that? It's not about ethics. It's not morality. It's not, it's just beliefs about life is sacrosanct. And that
only God is allowed to give you life.
Yes.
And therefore only God can take it away.
If I ever get like a degenerative disease, particularly of the mind for me, that's what I'm obsessed with, like Alzheimer's. At the moment where I do not even know Ntobeko, I do not know Vumezita, I do not know Samafuza, I do not know Sihayo,
right.
I know no one. This is just a shell.
Right.
It is just now like a biological machine that is just eating and pooping. Why am I sticking around? Because I have ceased to be me, right? I would want the option to check out.
Well, I suppose it's
and to be assisted if I can't actually check out myself.
Well, I think you can come with the key word, because technically you can kill yourself anytime.
Of course you can. Yeah.
But the problem just becomes, as somebody, I've thought about it at some point of just sort of like, do I want to be here? Why? Why not? Kind of vibe. And I'm always stumped by the method. The how would you kill yourselves? When we have a humane way that we know, or if you give this animal this particular sedative and you follow it up with the sedatives, within 3 minutes, basically, that the animal will be humanely dead. Why can we not do that for people? I know someone who had a relative who was over 90 years old.
Yeah.
And they had a burglary and they got beat up by the thugs and they were in a coma. Do you know that they literally had to wait? First of all, they had to stop feeding them with a tube, the relative, and starve her for 2 weeks until she died.
So she died of starvation.
So she died of starvation. She didn't die of any other thing. She died of starvation. And I think that's inhumane. If I was
that is
in
cruel.
Isn't it horrible?
It's cruel.
Why are we so averse to the conversation? Because I'm not even hearing the conversation. Where are we? There was a man called Sean, I can't remember his surname, who assisted his mother to die of suicide. I don't know how long ago, maybe 10 years ago.
I think it was about 7-8 years ago.
And
I remember
was arrested
case,
subsequently and charged, because according to South African law, you're not allowed to help people to unalive themselves.
And here's the thing about that, is that the reasons for why we are careful about that sort of thing is that, then people can hide behind it for murder and that sort of thing, right? I get that, right? But in a cut and dry case where someone has made it clear their wish that they actually do not want to be around anymore.
Right.
Like my father did.
Right.
In December of 2019, 4 months before my father passed away, I went home to check on him, and we're sitting there, and he's in the ICU at the time because he passed on from lymphoma. He had cancer. It was stage 4. We all knew my father was going. It was clear. It was obvious. And of course, you had to still, take him through chemo because we keep on hoping and hoping and so on.
Right.
And my father pulls me aside, calls my mother, says to us, Bantabam, mntanami, nkosikazi wami, ngicela manje ngicela nje ukuthi nje nenze plan. And I remember he actually even invoked Mandela, because he had this belief that Mandela was someone obviously had to switch off the machine, sort of thing. But again, the law was against us. But also I knew that my mother would never have gone for it, Because afterwards, I tried to have the conversation in the car going back home.
Right.
And she just like brushed me out. And I just knew I cannot have this
No,
conversation.
that mind you, then the challenge becomes how?
I know.
Do you understand? Like now it becomes really tricky because then how the hell do you do it?
She's a professional nurse. She knows how. She could come up with a concoction.
Do you think all this?
No, but what I'm saying, okay, I mean, I'm being facetious. Of course, I'm being facetious, but I mean, seriously, I think that it's really a simple matter of picking up this phone on YouTube and saying what.
You think so?
We can try it now. I can just go in and say, I can find a contact.
It's that easy.
I think it is. I really think it is.
And that's why people use the typical methods of hanging yourself or shooting yourself, because the
Here's
other
my question.
options...
Scaramouche.
Yeah.
What was Scaramouche given? Because I bet you.
I don't have
Because I bet
it was an injection.
Because I bet you whatever was given to your dogs, would exactly, you might just want to change the dosage.
Right.
And that's pretty much it.
Right.
And you know for a fact that vets would never have given your dogs something that gave them pain. They just fell asleep.
Right.
And they passed on.
Right.
And those concoctions, they're not difficult.
I'd love for that conversation to become a bit more center stage moving forward in the future. Can we at least have the discussion?
Just let's talk about it.
I know that the vast majority of this conversation, precisely because of our religious nature, would be completely anti.
Because, and this is the weirdest thing about death and so on. Guys, even taxes are not as certain as death. Yeah. Death is certain. We all gonna die.
And I think for me, that's the beauty of it. You cannot say, if I die.
No.
When? Nobody's asking you, who was that Rockefeller rich fellow who had 6 heart transplants?
Who was it?
You can have more money than Gaddafi.
Yes.
You can be prettier than all the Mrs. Universes put together or Miss Universes put together.
Yes.
It doesn't matter.
You're going to die.
Steve Jobs had more money than God.
Yes.
He died. Like all of us. It's the biggest, most beautiful equalizer that it doesn't matter who you are. Donald Trump.
Yes.
Utoshwa. Utoshwa.
I don't want to get into trouble, so I'm not going to say let's encourage him. But yeah, but do you know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, and why do you and I have these conversations? Is we're not trying to convert anyone into our way of thinking. If you don't really believe that you should
believe it,
you should be able to assist someone to die. But if it was legal and you asked me, and you said, Mnganami, you look me in the eye, you hold my hand, and you say, please assist me.
But
to
guys,
do it. I would.
Some things, just because they're legal, doesn't make them right.
I know.
Apartheid was very legal.
Yeah.
Do you understand? Like it was like legalized racism, but they didn't mean it was right. So in the same way that, for example, if you were to ask the average South African about some of these following issues, to say the right to terminate a pregnancy you don't want, and the right for LGBTQI people to exist. Yeah. Like if you were to have a referendum amongst the average South African that we're talking to and about, what would most of them say?
Let me say this to you about the average South African. If the average South African was living in America, they would have voted for Trump.
You're right. Yeah.
We need to call a spade a spade.
We're conservative.
Yeah. We don't like immigrants.
We hate immigrants.
We don't believe that a woman's right to her body to decide whether she wants to have a pregnancy.
We believe that a Jewish man walked on water.
Yes. We also don't. There's a lot of things we
problematic.
Yeah, we are the Bible Belt.
You know, I will say this. We say a lot of negative things about the African National Congress, the ruling party, so to speak, all right? But these are two factors which, for me, made it so easy to support them initially.
Yes.
Because these were part of my, let's say, conscientious DNA.
Yes.
Of like, as I was becoming a radical feminist in college,
yes,
I realized that, you know what? I cannot I cannot negotiate with people who don't believe in women's rights.
Yes.
I have to demand
Yes.
the right for me to go get an abortion.
Yes.
It's a human right. Like basically, I feel women's rights are human rights.
The right of a 12-year-old girl to go and ask for contraception at a clinic,
I think, should be inalienable.
The ANC, my goodness, during those negotiations, they were my stars. I was like, wow, these people are progressive.
Right.
Because it is the ANC that negotiated these things.
Don't get it twisted.
They are the ones that insisted.
It is only the ANC.
It was only the ANC that was progressive enough to even say these things need to be enshrined in the Bill of Rights. In other words, you will need 2/3 majority
basically
to change it.
Yes.
That is how progressive the African National Congress that you and I know. It'd be very interesting if you were to take a sample of our current NEC of however 86 or 87 members now,
right,
and ask them what they think about these issues. Because I think you might be surprised.
And it's one of those things that a lot of those opposition parties would, if given that moment now, would jump on it.
They would.
Because, you've got a lot of conservative Christians in there who really want to reverse our so-called moral rights.
Yes.
Which, the moral issue became a problem when you had somebody very immoral leading the moral regeneration program. An extremely problematic individual.
I distance myself from the views expressed by this woman about Ubaba Hungamalala. I don't know anything about his morality.
I didn't name anyone. We'll be back right after this break. All right, welcome back to the show. So from our shores to Pashia. Yeah, we go Pashia. We go to the United States of America.
To the lands yonder, across the pond.
Yes, across the Atlantic. We go there to the United States of America who, if things are bad in South Africa, like, I can't imagine being in the United States because he's actually your president.
Yes.
Like, we can see him from afar. We can laugh at him from afar. We can gawk at him from afar, but he doesn't have to be on our shores. So I don't know when this particular episode is going to show, but over the past couple of weeks, there's been some marches across the United States where thousands and thousands of Americans have taken to the streets in protest against the really weird, wonderful world of Donald Trump and his vice president, the South African Elon Musk, the former racist Elon Musk, essentially.
Did you just call Elon Musk the vice president?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And
am I lying? And tell me what I'm lying.
So what's Vans?
Oh, please.
Okay.
Vans who? JD Schmady.
Yeah.
So I'm talking about
the de facto
vice president, essentially.
Yeah.
And where Elon is crying every night because he's crashing at the stock exchanges. The Tesla barricade, what do you call those shares? Have basically plummeted.
He's lost about I think the last I checked, he'd lost something like 13 billion just. He is regressing. Eh?
I don't know how much, but I hope it's a lot. I just hope it's a lot.
Yes.
But anyway, so the Americans are marching. So I'm watching them because I like a good march. I love the French for that because they're good at their marches. All right.
No, they are prodigious.
They are prolific.
Like the French, when they strike, they don't mess up. They don't fuck around.
No,
they don't.
Like, they'll close down Charles de Gaulle for a week in order to get their points across.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, Ndumiso, we have so much in this country that we could march against. We have so much, whether it's the proposed VAT increase, whether it's crime, whether it's gender-based violence. Like, every day we could be marching for something. Why? We came from a very strong marching culture. South Africa was known for itoi.
Itoi.
Yeah? The appetite, no more. Because I think we need a march right now. And I'm saying, South Africans, why are we not marching? Because there is so much to march against. Why was I marching to miss?
Well, for starters, I must say that I'm also one of those cynical people who have, mocked and ridiculed them when they're marching. And I'm just like, okay, you can march all you want. Is it going to change anything?
Right.
Because a lot of the marches, right, what comes of them, right? Because what happens when South Africans protest, right? I don't know if we've forgotten. We've forgotten, what was his name? Andrew Tatane. This is what happens when we march.
He was murdered.
Yeah. Fees must fall. What was happening? Students had to basically say to their white counterparts, you go in front of the march.
Right.
Because black bodies are so dispensable.
Yeah.
Like black bodies.
Yeah.
And is there an appetite within the corridors of power for any kind of dissent in this country? We have got a president who, no dealers, was wearing military fatigues after the July 2021 unrest out in KZN. I am very afraid of that kind of mess. I'm not saying that it's wrong.
Right, yeah.
I think that we are past the point where we really should be taking to the streets. I mean, this whole thing, I am sorry, but this VAT hike that basically Kodonga arrogantly just came in, Treasury arrogantly it was just like this. What you gonna do?
Right.
Like literally, we are literally being told what you gonna do. And so you ask the question, why are we not marching? Hey man, I arrived in Durban on that Sunday before the riots and the looting that happened. And it's being framed as looting. But that was just really civil unrest. It was just people saying, we don't agree with you.
Right.
It doesn't really matter why, that it was about Ubaba Zuma being taken to prison. Because I remember, that particular Sunday, and I told you this, off air, that I actually met Ututuzile Zuma Sambudla.
Right.
At the airport. Who's being charged. One of her notorious tweets is, we see you, Sianbona. Which, I mean, the state is now arguing was basically giving an endorsement and saying, yes, go ahead and loot. But I was telling you also of good Lord, when that happens, like a popular uprising, and I don't know that the rest of South Africa actually properly appreciate what was actually happening on the ground in Durban.
Like how deep it got.
Dude, 8 hours queuing for bread. People were waking up. You would wake up at 2 a.m. to go queue just to get into the checkers to buy bread, maybe at 10 o'clock. It was bad. People had vehicles abandoned on the M13 on a major highway because they ran out of gas. You couldn't get gas. People had to queue for 6 hours just to get gas. And of course, this being South Africa, do you know what happened? The safest spaces became where?
The white area.
The white suburbs.
Right.
Because the white, you know that in July 2021, white people let me know what they think. I couldn't go past to go to my own house because my house goes through Hillcrest and Botha's Hill, and citizens like you and I, right? Armed to the teeth with guns. Who are you? Where are you going? You're not allowed. No, go back. Well, the Indian areas you couldn't go into. I was stuck in Mount Edgecombe because the citizens of Phoenix basically had barricaded every single road. And so what you are talking about is, I don't know that as soft as we are really battle ready for what that means, what a popular uprising looks like. Because in this country, it's very complicated.
I'll tell you what, remember our producer, Lekorotsoana?
Yes.
Georgia? When we were talking about this, she was saying that marches are not really led by young people. I mean, by older people.
Older people. They're generally not. No.
Generally led by younger people. Like if you look at something like the fees must fall. Are we too old to be hitting the front lines?
She's soft, Humutsu. Like really, do you have the energy when to go and bake in the sun from 6 in the morning? Because literally we're laughing, but literally the energy for that sort of thing really has always historically, even here, June 16, who was leading those marches? Sharpeville, who was in
and
the
marches are
unrest.
not picnics, right?
Not.
So don't go there thinking like, oh, this is cute.
No, they're not.
We'll do this until 2:00 and then I'll go get a manicure.
Yes.
No, that's not quite what a march is about.
But would those marches though yield any result?
Well,
let's assume that you had a huge march, Khomotso, and where there's a human chain that starts from Mary Fitzgerald in Newtown and goes all the way to Pretoria.
Right.
It's just a sea of humanity, and there are 400,000 people. Do you think it would change anything?
I think the ruling party know that we're so soft and that our appetite for dissent is really at its minimal. You know, because you and I have this conversation all the time. The media houses have been bought, right? Like, so even when you're reading about like the dissent against this government, like it's soft. Yeah. They're like little soft lobs, basically, you know, that tend to favor the government.
Kid gloves.
They completely treat
we treat.
I'll tell you what it would be. What it would take for me, I suppose, to say Masambeni.
Yes.
Somebody has to lead it. Somebody credible.
Yes.
Has to lead this march, and there's got to be deliverable outcomes. Because I thought that the whether 0.5% or the 2% increase in VAT was enough to say, because I feel like that of like, where am I supposed to get this money?
So here's the thing, right? We're sitting here right now. Dudu Zuma Sambudla has been taken to court for just tweeting, "We see you." You and I have just had this conversation. What is the likelihood that someone who is in power is listening to this and going, this podcast is inciting unrest?
I'm inciting a march. If that is unrest, then that's I'm inciting unrest.
Because for me, that's the conversation we need to be having, which is what reaction is there ever going to be? So whoever starts this, you know what will happen? It'll just be like, we've got intelligence reports that this is being MK Uzuma. This unrest Zuma or Juju.
Right.
Or because we're very good at that.
Right.
It'll just be like, no, it's not a popular uprising. No.
Right.
It's being incited by someone. And that unfortunately is the reality of the state that of the state that we live in.
You asked a very important question that I couldn't answer.
Yes.
I'll give you an example. The last march I went on was the blackout.
Yes.
For women.
Oh, I remember.
Pretoria.
Or
like, as women, wakatfal. And we can't take this anymore. You know, and so if you were to ask me, what were the results of that?
Yes.
How have women benefited since that march?
Yes.
I would say, you know, it's a problem when the government solution is to include the people who are leading the marches.
Yes.
Because all they do is co-opt you.
Yes.
And which is exactly what this government did. Very smartly.
Yes.
Is to take the leadership. But it was come. Be part of the decision makers. And in one sword hit, basically killed the entire leadership of that movement. So nothing happened.
In the same way that where are the leaders of the Fees Must Fall movement? And I'm not casting aspersions. I am just saying that, I mean, I think one of our MPs is, what's her name? Nompumelo Mkhatshwa, you know, was very much Fees Must Fall. Co-option is always...
Naledi Chirwa is with EFF, so different parties.
Different parties and so on. But that is essentially how this works. And so a lot of people, because it's very important who leads that march. I certainly would not want to join any march that was, for instance, started by Nhlanhla Lux. I would not be a part of it. You know what I mean?
Hell no.
So it'd be very important who was leading it, because some people like to come to the forefront of these situations because they know the modus operandi.
Right.
They know that the modus operandi is is going to be, oh, Khumbudzo is the one that, come here. Well, come here. We'll give you a position. You become the Director General of the Ministry for Women and Children. And
that's coming out of the presidency. Exactly. Usually people that they don't know what to do with or what to watch really up close called into the presidency.
Yeah, and so that for me is, I hear you and I hear the sentiment and I understand.
You're frustrated, didn't you?
We were frustrated, yeah, because like, where's our Arab Spring?
Yeah,
type situation. But also now, when you talk about the government, who are you really talking about? I mean, there's no ruling party in South Africa. There are only ruling parties,
right?
Because we've got right. We've got
right now, as you and I speak, it's literally up in the air.
Up in the air.
We're not sure if the DA is going to remain in the government of national unity. Or if it's going to decide to say, Futsak ANC and go their own way. So I'm not sure whether we still have a government of national unity. All I know is that I'm so disappointed with the current leadership that literally exists. And I don't think that any one of them have a real appetite for change. Yeah, because giving the GNU just made sure that we still have a bloated MP system. Nobody's going to get fired. So that
the party, the Democratic Alliance, that used to whine the loudest about bloated government, when they have to bloat the government to accommodate them, they all for the bloating of the government.
Exactly.
But aren't you the guys that were always complaining about this? No, but we got to be accommodated. Yeah.
So while I'm thirsty for a march, I can't think of anyone right now who would lead it that I would follow.
I cannot think of a single person. But also, like I'm saying, but also you need to understand that, black men...
Be careful what you wish for.
Black men, you're on your own. The people that are going to die, the people that are going to feel this are going to be poor black people, because particularly young black men's bodies are up for grabs. Anybody can beat the hell out of a young black man in South Africa. And unfortunately, whatever, because I would wish that we could have like a really peaceful march and a peaceful uprising in this country.
Right.
But we don't have the history of peaceful anything. And remember, you and I also remember that we are also, even though we're poor, we're still lower middle class. Yeah. And when they come, they're going to come for everyone.
Right.
Yeah, we were worried at home. We were worried. Are they going to come for us as well? Because unfortunately, that's a reality.
And only because you have something somebody doesn't have. It doesn't take that much.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Ooh, wishful thinking, or just kind of like wrap it up at that point.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot. But like I say, it's just like it's all fine and well to wish for a mass protest. But do I actually have the stomach for it?
Yeah, because the things that I saw, I haven't even begun to start writing about it, because I was there in Kwamashu and I could see the people going for the macro in Springfield, and I saw the warehouses in Hammersdale burning. I looked around. I was afraid. It was scary. And I'm not sure that everyone quite gets the picture. Only people from KZN really understand what we're talking about here. It was scary. It was very scary.
Note, comrade, what about you at home? Do you have an appetite for civil disruption, for civil unrest that could somehow make us, as the ordinary voting public, feel like we're being heard? We'd love to hear what you've got to say. Please let us know on all our social media. Until next time, bye.
Cheers.